You're watching NewsX. I'm Hardeep Singh. Justin Trudeau has hit out at the Indian government after 41 Indian diplomats, Canadian diplomats were sent packing as a result of souring relations between the two nations after Canada's serious allegations of extrajudicial killings against India. Canada has said that India has violated the Vienna Convention and international law. Let's in fact listen into what Trudeau had to say.
The actions that the government of India took this week are themselves contrary to international law. The government of India decided to unilaterally revoke the diplomatic immunity of 40 Canadian diplomats in India. This is a violation of the Vienna Convention governing diplomacy. But it also has very real impacts on the millions of people who travel back and forth between India, as students, as family members, for weddings, for businesses, for the growing trade ties between our countries. The Indian government is making it unbelievably difficult for life as usual to continue for millions of people in India and in Canada.
India has refuted Canada's claims. India has said it has worked well within the provisions of the Vienna Convention to reduce the size of the Canadian mission in India. India, in fact, has quoted Article 11.1 of the Vienna Convention, which reads, in the absence of specific agreement as to the size of the mission, the receiving state may require that the size of a mission be kept within limits considered by it to be reasonable and normal, having regard to circumstances and conditions in the receiving state and to the needs of the particular mission. Well, keeping aside fresh allegations of subverting international law, there is a lot more than Justin Trudeau has had to say. Justin Trudeau has warned the world. He has said the world should be very worried about India's action against its envoys. In fact, taking it a step further, he has said he's worried about the well-being of Canadians and Indian Canadians who live in Canada, of course, and he claims that their lives have been made harder by these decisions taken by the Indian government.
All countries should be concerned about. The government of India decided to cancel, to revoke the diplomatic protections of 40 diplomats working in Canada. They're working in India. This is something that has far-reaching consequences for the diplomatic world that I know many countries are very worried about. It's something that has me very concerned for the well-being and happiness of millions of Canadians who trace their origins to the Indian.
What Trudeau forgot to address, though, were the Kill India posters put up by Khalistanis on Canadian soil. What Justin Trudeau obviously forgot to address were posters put up in Canada calling for the assassination of Indian diplomats and the Indian Prime Minister as well. Trudeau is clearly worried for the safety and well-being of Canadians, but in his country is allowing Khalistanis and Khalistani terrorists to celebrate Talvinder Parmar. Remember, he was the mastermind of the Kanishka bombings that killed 268 Canadians. Well, the whole matter now boils down to the killing of one man, Hardeep Nijjar. A month after making serious allegations against India, Canada has yet to provide solid proof. Listen in to what Trudeau said about this issue of Hardeep Nijjar today and what he's also said earlier when this controversy erupted.
All countries in the world should be very worried about. And this is putting aside the allegations we made of a serious violation of international law with the alleged killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil that the Indian government could have been involved in.
Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
For a Prime Minister who was so sure of India's involvement in the killing of Hardeep Nijjar, Trudeau uses the word allegedly a lot. If Canada is so sure, why does it continue to play safe with the words it uses against India? The truth is, Trudeau has destroyed relations with India over Hardeep Nijjar. Canada is now trying very hard to rally the world against India, but obviously that is not happening. Many are asking, have Trudeau's allegations backfired as well? In fact, joining us now live is Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, Government of India, and former diplomat. Of course, he's also now Chancellor, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Kanwal Sibal, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking time out today and joining us on NewsX.
My pleasure.
Ambassador Sibal, let me begin by asking you about these latest utterances by Justin Trudeau. Do you believe that this shows that the Canadians are truly rattled, that obviously the words have now translated into action by the Indian government on diplomatic parity and other issues? What do you make of this latest statement by Justin Trudeau, which obviously follows what his foreign minister as well said just a day ago?
Well, a few things. One, of course, you have described very well what he said as utterances. Number two, if this is the kind of homework they do with regard to international conventions, then I'm afraid it reflects on the so-called investigation that they're supposed to be doing with regard to the killing of Nijjar. Now, I am very surprised that neither the Foreign Office, its legal department, or anybody else, his advisors, have actually told him what the Vienna Convention contains. And you rightly pointed out what our government has said with regard to the Vienna Convention, Article 11.1, which clearly states that the size of the mission can be determined by the host government. Now, we have, right from the start, said that the Canadian mission in India is far too large. In New Delhi, it doesn't apply to the consulates, which we have clarified. That is far too large, there is a disparity, and that these diplomats are interfering in our internal affairs. And therefore, given the nature of our relationship, it must be downsized. And we gave them till October 10, and this was apparently delayed to October 20. It was made very clear to them that they have to remove these diplomats. They have not been expelled. We've asked the government of Canada to remove them. And in order not to allow them to do foot dragging and keep on postponing, and generate pressure on us through the United States or elsewhere, we gave them a deadline. And now, under international law, they were obliged to observe this deadline, and they have withdrawn these diplomats. They have not been expelled. They've been withdrawn by the Canadian government. That is the second thing. The third thing is that it's not India that is escalating. It is Mr. Trudeau continues to escalate matters. And the statements that he made, and I've just heard them, they have not been fully reported in the press, and I didn't know. They're much worse than what I read in the press. I mean, he's saying that this is a threat to other countries and to functioning of diplomacy and this and that. Does he believe that other countries don't know what the Vienna Conventions are? And it's not as if we are obliging all countries to downsize their missions and have parity in terms of number of diplomats we have in their country and they have in our country. It all depends on the depth of the relationship, the degree of interaction with the foreign government, the dialogues that are taking place, the depth of the economic relationship, people-to-people relationship, and everything else. And if these are friendly relations, as in the case of the United States, which has a huge embassy here, far, far bigger than our embassy in Washington, D.C., there is no problem. We can continue to live with this disparity, which reflects as I said, the range of the ties that exist between the two countries. Now with Canada, it is not much of an economic relationship. Yes, their pension funds and others have invested in this country, but in terms of trade, it's very little. It's less than the trade we have with Bangladesh. And but most of it is focused on immigration from largely Punjab to Canada and the students. Now, nothing obliged them to close down servicing the applicants for visas and everything else in Chandigarh or in Mumbai or in Bangalore, because these are not included in the downsizing demand that we made, but they have chosen to do that. So when he says that this will create a lot of problems for millions of people of Indian origin in Canada, both ways, and this and that, disrupt this and disrupt that, They have taken the decision. We only asked for the diplomats in New Delhi to be downsized. So on every single issue, he's either wrong, he's misleading, he's distorting issues, and he's playing a victim card. And all for what? For a Mr. Nijjar, who had an Interpol red corner notice against him, who was a fugitive from Indian justice. We had asked him to be extradited, and then it's not very clear who killed him. Now he's talking about alleged involvement of Indian authorities, etc., and the investigation is going on. Now, how is it that they have not been able to arrest any single person in Canada? What are their intelligence agencies, security agencies doing? they can't figure out from their investigations as to how it might have happened. The whole thing is extremely murky. He jumped the gun. He's irresponsible. He's juvenile. He's immature. And he has single-handedly tried to destroy what was a much improving relationship. But I don't know what his calculations are. And he thinks he can muster global opinion against him. I leave aside global opinion. Even the G7 countries are not with him, barring the United States, which seems obliged to support him up to a certain extent, and is still saying that they are concerned at the Indian action and there should be cooperation extended by the government of India to Canadian authorities. But cooperation for what? First of all, they should share with us some specific information, which they have not done. Now, Government of India, External Affairs Minister has repeatedly said they have not shared any specific information. They have not come back to say, yes, we have shared specific information. They still talk about allegations and potential links. So they have no specific information. And yet they're basing their entire stance on this subject towards India on very flimsy grounds, but potentially politically very serious, where they have actually accused India of doing what Iran and North Korea and countries like that are accused of doing, of extrajudicial, or actually of killing people on foreign soil.
Yes.
This is totally unacceptable. And India is fed up with this man, and therefore is not willing to give him any quarter. And he's making worse things for himself. He could have taken a more reasonable posture, tried to calm down things, make the whole issue take a lower profile internationally and bilaterally, but he's doing just the opposite. I was really shocked at the statements that you read out, at the statement he made, which you read out just now. I didn't realize that he's being so foolish.
Do you believe that the Indian government's response then has been very adequate and very robust? Firstly, Kanwal Sibal, and secondly, also, do you believe that Justin Trudeau has somewhat been surprised at the lack of open world support that he has got? Obviously, there were certain comments that came initially from the United States and Australia and the UK, but nothing as vociferous and robust as Trudeau would have wanted.
Look, this is an issue between India and Canada. Of course, there is a larger issue involved that if a particular government takes some action on foreign soil by eliminating, even if it's the terrorist and it's a violation of the sovereignty of that country. All those arguments are there, though, mind you, the country that has done the most of it and quite blatantly and openly and publicly is the United States of America. So therefore, they have no ground to accuse any other country of following suit. But that is one aspect of it. The other is that no other country is going to take this issue up with India on the basis of lack of specific evidence, on the basis of allegations, on basis on political potential links, on the basis of no evidence which has been shared by them in terms of what the results of Canada's own investigation on the ground has produced. Because if they had done that, they would have shared with their partners, the Five Eyes and G7 countries, who would have then taken a different public stance on this, because they would have something meaty in their hands to say. But it's all vague. It's all based on suppositions. And what is worse is that a few weeks have elapsed during which some serious conversations could have taken place. There are reports, I don't know if true or not, that the Canadian Foreign Minister went to Washington to talk to Jaishankar about this. And maybe they got a reprieve for another 10 days to sort things out and have their diplomats being withdrawn in a more orderly manner. It's possible, but they could have actually explored behind the scenes diplomatic options in a calm and measured way and tried to, how should I say, make the issue more manageable. But this man is making it more and more unmanageable by actually falsely quoting the Vienna Convention. And as I said, I'm amazed that his advisors have let him do that. The man doesn't do his homework. His staff and people around him don't guide him properly. And as they say, I don't know if it's true or not, the opposition in Canada says that he's very narcissistic. And he's very, very concerned about his image and he wants to have his way. So there it is. He's paying the price for this folly because India-Canada relationship is very important. It's not as if people on our side will also have difficulties because of the decision we have taken. After all, after the United States, the largest number of students going abroad from India to Canada was from India. And there will be a delay in processing visas and students may have to change their plans. But this is at the individual level. But there is the issue at the state level, which is far, far more important because terrorism is involved. Encouragement to terrorism is involved. Support for gangland warfare, violence, etc. in India, separatism, all that is involved. Therefore, the state has to take a larger view of things. And if on our side also there is a little price to pay, well, there it is. There it is. It can't be helped.
Right. Let me, in fact, also very quickly then, Kanwal Sibal, ask you about which direction you see this heading in now. What next in this, diplomatic standoff, in this diplomatic feud?
I think it's become more unmanageable. The Canadians could have tried to forestall this situation that has taken place by being more reasonable. But they decided not to and pushed India to do what we were obliged to do because we got no satisfaction on them. And you rightly said just now that there are still posters which are being put up seeking the death of our High Commissioner and our consular officials, the Foreign Minister of India and the Prime Minister of India. I heard a couple of days ago a clip of this fellow, who is a Canadian US citizen, I'm forgetting his name, openly calling for teaching India a lesson in balkanization of India and stuff like that. And that's happening under Mr. Trudeau's watch, the watch of his security agencies. Now, if he had begun to take some steps against these people, then India might have actually responded more positively that, yes, the message has gone home. They are now trying to curb the activities of these elements. But if they maintain the position, it is free speech, etc., then I'm afraid they left India with no choice. And finally, they're talking about expulsions being a violation of international diplomatic norms, leave aside the Vienna Convention. In 2018, they expelled 4 or 6, I forget the number, Russian diplomats. The Americans have expelled, and European Union combined, over 200, maybe around 250 Russian diplomats ever since the Ukrainian affair began. Now, I mean, look at the number of people these people have sent back home. And here they're saying that what we have done is a violation of international. What do they do when they expel foreign diplomats?
Yes, absolutely. But as far as, of course, now visa services are concerned as well, Kanwal Sibal, that is also something that is a question mark right now. Because that affects citizens, that affects people-to-people ties, and obviously Trudeau is responsible for sabotaging those. But do you see those getting impacted long-term as well? I think that would be something our viewers would be concerned about as well, particularly the diaspora that often goes to Canada.
Long-term, no. Short-term, yes. And the only answer to this is Trudeau's defeat in the next elections, which is in 2025. And once he's out of the way, then the source of this conflict would have been removed from the scene. And in the past, the Conservative governments, Stephen Harper and all, they were very friendly, and our relations had improved enormously, to the extent that even the nuclear issue, which was at the root of a lot of our problems with Canada, even that was resolved. But it is this man, because he's dependent on the NDP and its leader, Jagmeet Singh, who has struck with the Khalistanis. He is a minority government. He will lose power if he abandons them. So under pressure from these lobbies, he's picking up their cause and picking up a fight with India. Now, it is true that it will disrupt the plans of many of our students who want to go there. Certainly, it's a problem for them. But you have to distinguish between the interests of the state and the interests of the individual. The interest of the individual has to be subservient to the requirements of the state. And people-to-people ties cannot flourish unless there is basic stability in government-to-government, state-to-state ties. Now, if Mr. Trudeau is hell-bent to destroy the state-to-state ties and government-to-government ties, then people-to-people ties will automatically suffer. It's not our fault. It's the fault of Mr. Trudeau and his government and his politics.
Okay. Let me, in fact, quickly then ask you, Kanwal Sibal, also on whether you believe that this is simply for domestic politics, that Trudeau has, come out so steadfastly in favor of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Do you believe he's done it simply for vote bank reasons? Turning a blind eye to Khalistanis who have threatened our Indian embassy officials there, who've called for, literally assassination of our Prime Minister and also celebrated assassination of former Prime Ministers. These are blatant, secessionist activity, which obviously has turned a complete blind eye to.
The joke is that he calls India's action by asking Canada to withdraw its diplomats under the Vienna Convention as unethical. His foreign minister has called it unethical.
Yes.
And all that you have described just now, is it ethical? under which law or state-to-state relationship or norms of conduct or diplomatic and otherwise, is that ethical? And he doesn't want to put any curbs. He not once described Nijjar as a terrorist or used any adjective would actually show who he is. He talks about him as a Canadian citizen, no matter what he does or has done. So it is entirely on account of, two things: domestic politics and his own temperament. Unfortunately, both have coalesced to make it very difficult to deal with Canada under the Prime Ministership of Mr. Trudeau.
All right. Kanwal Sibal, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX with your perspective, analyzing this big story for us, former Foreign Secretary. Appreciate you being with us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.